going to wrap up this section on security, switch security that is, with a little bit of a refresher on some differences between Telnet and SSH. This is not meant to be a detailed lab on Telnet. We're going to look at a few commands, but there's one issue with Telnet. It's a great way to communicate with remote routers and switches, but all of the data that goes to that remote host, including passwords, is transmitted in clear text. And any would-be network intruder who gets a hold of that transmission can get into the network easily and cause all kinds of trouble and pain. And we really hate that. We hate trouble and we hate pain, especially when it's ours. Now, Secure Shell, SSH, it's basically encrypted Telnet because the basic operation of SSH is very similar to that of Telnet, but all of the data and that all-important password, they are encrypted. We love that. So you look at these two illustrations right here. Everything with Telnet is unencrypted. Everything with SSH is encrypted. So why aren't we using SSH everywhere, every time, every situation that Telnet is called for? Well, SSH requires a little more configuration than Telnet. We don't care about that. We're network admins. We do configs for a living. The problem may be that your hardware might not support it and your iOS image might not support it. Telnet pretty much runs on anything. But SSH is going to require a stronger iOS image and hardware that you, again, may not have in your network. Now, for SSH authentication, you've got two options. You're going to either configure a local database on the router or use AAA. And we have a special section on AAA later in the course. It's not pronounced AE. Telnet allows the configuration of a one-size-fits-all password on the VTY lines. We know all about that. You just go line VTY04, log in, password CCNP, you're all set. SSH does not allow you to do that, and with good cause, because that's just an awful way to have a password. It really is. Now, what you might want to do if you're running SSH is allow authentication via the VTY lines with SSH, but disallow Telnet completely. We're going to look at that and a couple of other commands here. Let's go ahead and bring this up from the CDP lab. And let's go ahead and dive in. Line VTY04. Now, what I need to do, though, if I can't use login, then I need to use login local. And with local password checking, that means it's going to look at the local username password database. And if the word database happens to intimidate you in any way, don't let it. It's going to be the simplest database you've ever written. I'll remind you of that command in a moment. But what you're going to do is just go, login local, and let's look at transport input. You'll see different options on different switches, but here, you've got all, none, or one. You've got all, none, SSH, and Telnet as options. So if you put transport input SSH, you are really disabling Telnet. So I'm going to put SSH there, and then that's it. So I'm all done, right? And you know when I'm asking that, I'm asking a leading question, Your Honor. On a router, this would be a superb configuration. Line VTY04, login local, transport input SSH, and you can go about your merry way with the rest of the config. The only issue is, way at the bottom down here, we remind ourselves that Cisco switches have 16 VTY lines. So just make sure to cover your lines and anything else with with conf T first, of course, and then line VTY 015. Then put your commands in. And your gold right there. So just a quick reminder about Cisco switches and Telnet and SSH lines. Now, as for that user database, all you do, it's username followed by the username that you're going to assign someone, then a password, and you just keep repeating this. This is so much better than having a one-size-fits-all password where you go to Telnet and you go to the VTY lines, do login, and then just password CCNP or something like that. So, you build your username password. Of course, they both have to match in order for someone to authenticate, as I know you know, but I'm telling you anyway. If someone logs in with a username Tarrant, they have to use the password Tarantula, and so forth. Now, We've got a couple of other commands we need with SSH. These are good commands to know. First, you've got to define your domain name with the IP domain name command. Egomaniac that I am. And let's see, a crypto key generation. Crypto key generate. And your options here are RSA. And it's going to say, you know, here are the name for the keys. Choose the keys of the size from 360 to 4096. I'm just going to stick with 512. And it's going to give you a little message. Took one whole second to do it. And then a little message here that's a good thing to look at. The timestamp makes it a little hard to read, but I'll go off screen here. RSA key size needs to be at least 768 bits for SSH version 2. And you can see that SSH 1.5 has been enabled. 512 is a little small, I grant you. I just chose that because that was the default. That's going to be way beyond the scope of your NP exam. They're not going to get into different little versions of SSH like 1.5 and 2.0. But they might get into the fact that you've got to have the local database or AAA, and you've got to have an IP domain name defined and crypto key generate. Now, there's one more thing that I want to mention about these two protocols, Telnet and SSH, and this is actually a similarity. They both still allow you to tie down who can log in and who can't by IP address by using the access class command. Just a quick reminder on that, and we'll just call it, well, it's got to be called standard, and we got one guy that we want to stop, so we'll call it stop that guy. And we're going to do a deny host on the all threes address. What do we got to do here? Permit any, right? Because what is the overall, excuse me, what does it mean when you've got an ACL with one deny line and nothing else written? That means you are denying everybody because of the implicit deny. So let's do a permit any right there. Then we can go to the VTY lines again. Access class, then you just put either the number of the word, whatever you put. And without looking, what else do we need on this command? It's a classic for people to forget, but you're not going to forget. You still got to say whether you're filtering incoming connections or outgoing connections, and that's it. So just some good stuff there to know, primarily about SSH, you know, why would we want to use it, and one or two limitations about when we couldn't use it, and that's when our iOS image stops us or we don't have the hardware. Knowing the commands for an SSH setup, I think, is good to know for your CCNP switch exam. That does wrap up the security section, but we are going to do some security-related work in the next section, which is where we're going to monitor the network, starting with syslog. I'll see you in the very next section, and we'll get started with syslog.